Howard Beck, Bleacher Report columnist, joining us on the program. Was Kevin Durant's stay in Golden State good for the NBA?
Oh, boy. I tend to not look at these things as what's good or bad for the NBA, Dan, but just kind of what is, and then we just see where the consequences of it are. But, I mean, now that it's over, look, there's this love-hate thing we do with dynasties, with super teams. We love them or love to hate them. We resent them. And I know in this case, because people didn't feel like it was organically built or because Durant joined in a ready-made championship team, that somehow made it even worse than the average. I don't care about any of that. But I do think that, the ratings show that there was incredible interest in the playoffs and the finals in the last few years. I think local ratings were down in the last few years on a lot of the regional sports networks, which it's hard to divine what that means. It may mean that there's a lack of hope and intrigue in certain markets because of the fact that it felt like the championship was preordained. It's hard to know how to analyze that. I do think that this 5-year Warriors run in total, with and without Durant, the whole thing, it was good for the NBA in that people were really, really interested in the Warriors, and the Warriors played an incredible brand of basketball with some of the greatest players in the sport's history, and people wanted to watch that. So I think on balance it was probably good. I also think that the crash and burn now of the Warriors, or at least the temporary pause, means there's going to be a lot more intrigue about next season and who can win the title. Even though the Warriors aren't the defending champions, it's just going to feel a lot more wide open, and I have to think that's a good thing.
If you could say to Durant, prior to making that decision to Golden State, this is what's going to happen. You're going to win a couple of titles, and you're going to blow out your Achilles, and then you're going to leave. Would he sign up for that?
Oh, interesting. I think most guys would tell you at the outset, hell yes. I think, and we see it all the time, right? We see guys sacrifice their bodies in the sport. Not all of them do. We've seen, Kobe Bryant played through all kinds of ridiculous stuff. We all know, in football, Ronnie Lott chopping off his pinky or part of it. I mean, athletes will go to extreme lengths at times to guarantee themselves the chance to win, much less the guarantee to win. So if you're telling him this is the bargain you're paying in advance, your deal with the devil, you're going to spend 3 years there, win 2 titles, 2 finals MVPs, but you're going to leave with a pretty lousy injury at age almost 31, I think he might take it.
We're talking to Howard Beck, Bleacher Report, NBA reporter, columnist. Are you an insider? How does that? Are you an outsider or an insider, Howard?
I kind of think of myself as more of the outsider.
Okay.
I'm not sure I'm comfortable with the idea of being an insider.
There's a lot of pressure.
I don't want to be part of any club that will have me.
All right. So what are you hearing about Kawhi Leonard, and what is this coming down to that he needs time to make his decision?
It's a great question. Quick observation here. Kawhi Leonard, who we've thought of as the most no drama, no nonsense superstar, all this stuff. He's the one who's actually dragging things out. Like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving made their decision right off the bat. Jimmy Butler is already in place. Everybody else is already in place. It's Kawhi Leonard, the guy who never wants anybody to look at him, pay attention, Mr. No Drama, Mr. Low Maintenance. He's the guy who's dragging this out and has now got us all hostage. How about that?
Yeah.
I don't, listen, it's hard for us to know what's going through his head, even on smaller things, much less something as weighty as where he's going to spend the rest of his career potentially. So I don't know. I suspect, look, first of all, this is his first free agency. This is I think, difficult decision for him. If things had gone badly in 1 year in Toronto, it's easy to leave. But things went spectacularly on every level, not just the championship, but just the connection I think he had with that organization, with his teammates, with the entire country of Canada. And I think walking away from that would be difficult. I think that both LA teams present some really attractive possibilities. I think that he initially, as we know from a year ago, wanted to go home to Southern California, and that pull is still there. And the Lakers, do you really want to go be the third wheel to LeBron James and Anthony Davis? I mean, maybe they feel like they could just then go dominate the league for the next 5 years. I don't know. I mean, these are 3 very different options and trade-offs, and there's the possibility of staying and going short on a contract. Anybody who's trying to guess what's in Kawhi's head is a fool.
It just feels like the media is hopeful he goes to the Lakers. If he stays in Toronto, then it's like, okay, he stayed in Toronto. Either that or the Clippers. Like, I think it's more interesting if he went to the Clippers than the Lakers. Yes. We want change. We like change. How many times do we get to a trade deadline and we're going, oh, this guy could be traded, this guy could be traded. And then you wake up the next day and go, who got traded? It's some sixth man who got traded. This is a big deal because this impacts LeBron's legacy. I know we love using that word legacy, but it impacts his legacy and Kawhi's legacy as well. If he wins a third title with a third different team, maybe tacks on a couple more, he moves up that list of great players of all time. Anthony Davis, with what it does for him, the Lakers organization. I don't know. It's a big. I don't know if it's a seismic shift in the history of the game. I think Sunday was one of those days that we're going to look back and say that was a pretty big day in NBA history. But Kawhi, if he ends up with the Clippers, is more interesting than him going to the Lakers.
I agree. Him going to the Lakers, I think everybody, on the one hand, you're right. I mean, we're all addicted to transactions and change is more interesting than just static, inertia. I think him going to the Lakers, though, will cause a lot of people to roll their eyes and say, okay, here we go again. The guy like Kawhi Leonard, who at this very moment might be the best player in the world, is going to go join up with two of the other top 5 players in the world, and people are going to, oh, here we go, another super team, another LeBron-led super team.
Well, any of those Laker fans who criticize the Golden State Warriors for adding Kevin Durant, we're going to have to go, on second thought.
Yeah. I mean, it's always great when it's your team, although, listen, credit to, I should acknowledge this, that there are a lot of Warriors fans who never really warmed to Kevin Durant. We're always kind of resentful of him being there and stealing some of Steph Curry's spotlight because there are a lot of Warriors fans who are Steph Curry, stands more than anything, and they don't want to. They never really wanted Kevin Durant to take any of his spotlight, and they kind of think, we could have won it without him anyway. They're wrong, but so I think that for Laker fans it'll be really interesting too, Dan, because they haven't really embraced LeBron through year one. Like, it's a really kind of, I think, distant relationship right now that LeBron and LA have with each other.
Yeah.
And in part, it's because of the way the season went. In part, because he got there as a guy who was already a decorated champion and multiple-time MVP, and he didn't do it on their watch. And so they're not sure what to make of him. And now AD is another hired gun, and then Kawhi is going to come in as a hired gun. And I know that's been the Laker way in the past, but it's usually been a combination of homegrown and hired guns. So it's a strange dynamic in terms of how they'll embrace that team. But listen, the Lakers, and their fans love championships more than anything, and having Kawhi there would almost guarantee it. I'm not sure it's good for if we're going to go back to what's good for the league, what's good for the game. Kawhi and joining the Clippers would be excellent. Having a true LA versus LA rivalry would be great. The fact that the Nets are now cast in a whole new light because Kyrie Irving and KD chose them. And so the two teams that are, the stepchild in their markets, the Clippers and Nets, both having done a lot of great work the last few years to earn that. And if they both come out of this with all-stars, is also good for the health of the league in that it just shows that, hey, look, if you put things together the right way and you build a foundation and you're smart, the top talent will want to come to you.
I'll leave you with this, with the Knicks game plan. I know it's easy to pick on them, but I was trying to defend, the Knicks, that maybe they were just being prudent with Kevin Durant. But if Kevin Durant was not going to the Knicks, if Kyrie wanted to go to the Nets and he wanted to play with Kyrie and bring in DeAndre Jordan, then I don't understand why we're ripping the Knicks because they didn't want to give Kevin Durant a 5-year, they didn't want to give him the max deal. But if he wasn't going there, then they could give him, 50 years. It didn't matter. He was not going there in the first place. Or am I missing something here? Because it doesn't feel like he was ever considering the Knicks or truly considering the Knicks.
I reported this yesterday, and the quote I got from somebody who was very knowledgeable in the situation said there was, quote, zero chance that the contract from the Knicks, any contract offer from the Knicks, had anything to do with Kevin Durant not going there. Right. Zero chance. He chose the Nets over the Knicks, in part because Kyrie was going to go to the Nets and they wanted to play together, and in part because he and Kyrie both had concluded over the course of the season that the Nets were in much better shape, than the Knicks were, and that they were the better place to land. And so it didn't matter whether the Knicks were offering 1 year, 2 year, 4 years, 100 years, max, not max. It didn't matter. He wasn't going to go there. So the Knicks are off the hook in that regard. But I will say this, putting that out there, making sure that people knew we weren't going to go to the wall on it, is absolutely self-serving, because you're trying to get yourself off the hook in the sense that you're trying to show that we were being prudent, we were being thoughtful, we were trying not to do something dumb, and that's why we lost him. Like, no, that's not why you didn't get him. And by the way, everybody else in the league would have taken the risk and given him the 4-year max, even with the Achilles.
Yeah.
So I that does not get them off the hook. And then there's still the fact of what they did in the wake of not getting the targets that they wanted. And by the way, that's the other thing. It's disingenuous for the Knicks to try to pretend that they weren't all out for KD, Kyrie, and by the way, DeAndre Jordan as the third piece, who the Nets also got. It's disingenuous to say they weren't targeting that package the entire season. That's exactly what they wanted. They didn't get it. Just, acknowledge that you missed and move on. And the guys that they signed, I'm not sure where it gets them. I'm not sure how this advances their cause. It makes them slightly better next year, but I don't know what the Knicks' plan is right now.
Oh no, I know for a fact from a source that, and the quote that I got from somebody with the Knicks was, "As long as we don't screw this up, we're going to get Kevin Durant." That was the quote that I was given, that quote late in the season during the playoffs. As long as we don't screw it up, we're going to get Kevin Durant. But imagine if they'd gotten Zion Williamson.
Yeah.
How would that change anybody's mind of wanting to play for the Knicks?
I think it would have given them more pause for sure. Now, listen, I'm the first to say, and I always will say this, and this includes Zion Williamson, it is extremely rare for a rookie to come in and be ready to win on day one. And Zion Williamson certainly has some work to do in terms of developing his game at the NBA level. He is an incredible athletic, just dynamo, and he's going to have a very good NBA career. There's not universal, agreement that he's going to be a superstar. And so on day one, if you're Kyrie and KD and you need a team that can win immediately because, and certainly in KD's case, you're older, then I don't know if that would have done enough or not, because the rest of that Knicks roster is still pretty
But it wouldn't have been his team. It would have been Zion's team, not KD's, and KD wants his own team, right?
KD wouldn't have thought of it as Zion's team, I don't think. But
the fans would have. The fans would have.
Maybe. But Dan, I also think this. If they'd gotten the draft rights to Zion, if they'd won the lottery, I think there would have been a strong temptation and probably even a very good case to be made that they should then trade that pick to get the veterans that they need to create the team that KD and Kyrie could win with immediately. So in the alternate universe.
How about this? If you're the Knicks and you can only have one, you can have Zion or KD.
Zion or post Achilles KD?
Yeah.
I'm going to take Zion only because when KD comes back, he's going to be 32. He's turning 32 I think it's September of 2020, and we don't expect to see him playing until October of 2020. And if nothing else, it's the fact that I don't feel like I'm going to get a long enough run with him. And with Zion, even though I'm still in kind of like the let's wait and see camp. I'm not proclaiming Zion an MVP and a 10-time All-Star yet. I don't know what he's going to be, but I do know that getting a guy on day one, especially as exciting a player as he is, and having him for potentially his whole career, letting your team grow with him, your fans grow with him, the emotional investment and the payoff that brings is more satisfying and healthier for the franchise, because it gives you an identity that endures for longer. And KD is on the back end of his career.
He's the senior NBA writer for Bleacher Report. Howard, great to check in with you. Thank you as always.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune into Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV. Stream for free on BR Live or download the Dan Patrick Show app.